Other. For a while I was reluctant for reasons that you hint at. I was reluctant to turn my poetry into preaching for the environment. You know, you can understand how a poet doesn't want to be a preacher. And so there was that blockage for a while. And finally through one of my sons, who is a geologist, and my wife, who encouraged me to do it anyway, I started uniting the nature and the poetry, and that was many years ago. But I've been doing that ever since. But my writing is not typically your "let us please save the pretty flowers," and you know, my writing is quite various and often very playful, and not often very directly connected to pleading for the health of the environment. So I believe that it's really good to cultivate a wide variety of attitudes toward nature through poetry and creative writing. And it's good to sort of imitate the variety of nature in one's language style, rather than standing there looking down on things and saying, this is how I think things should be. And totally do away with. The artist is sometimes looked upon as a frivolous being, and you just gotta think otherwise, or you just have to include that and think otherwise. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're a frivolous being, and so are you, and so is everybody. And nevertheless, I have total faith in the fact that the arts are like a major justification for the existence of civilization. I mean, what else is civilization good for? Cars? I mean, you know, convenience, all this TV ads. I mean, the arts, even though the arts are sometimes a minority taste, I think they have the quality of spreading out into everybody's consciousness. And, you know, Shelley remarked that the poet is the unacknowledged legislator of the world, or something like that. And I believe that to a great extent. So I just go ahead with it and think and also because I work with kids, I think I'm helping them open up their minds to, you know, multiple ways of looking at things and so on. Mm-hmm. The poet's influence, Shakespeare, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, people saw a few plays of his in his lifetime, but since his death, especially, he happens to have been a really good writer, and his way of looking at things has spread and spread and spread and spread, and that's a way of being a legislator. Eco-lit, which is short for ecology literature. So it is a course in the writing department, you know, and it's primarily based on creative writing, but it's creative writing with an ecological slant. And what I try to give them is a great big variety pack of, it's a huge subject, you know. It's too huge for one, you know, just one course to cover. So I have a big course book of writers ranging from Thoreau and before, and to some extent people around the world, although I focus mainly on the European-American writing tradition. And, you know, Thoreau and Rachel Carson and all those people. And I assign readings to the students all semester long, and they write little weekly reports on the various readings, which are essays and poems and whatnot. And then we also do writings in class, and I try to instigate in them a whole lot of different creative writing approaches, because I think that's how nature works. And what else do we do? We take a walk at 1 or 2 points, and I ask for their ideas, you know, for them to bring in writers they like, who in the course book may not include. And there are so many And I try to introduce them to the whole field of possibly interactions, word interactions between humans and nature. And putting it that way, I'm trying to just give an indication of how vast the possibilities are. Really, I think it's been springing up and spreading and growing for, especially for the last 20 years and 30 years. And, you know, 1970 was a good year.
What was in 1970?
I think the first Earth Day occurred in 1970. Or I'm losing my short-term memory or long-term memory too, but it was either 1970 or 1980. I forget. And there was, with the hippie movement, there was a lot included in the hippie movement. There was a lot of earth consciousness and sort of nascent environmental sensibility. Mm-hmm. So, you know, in the 60s, that was kind of a jump. But, you know, before that, there were so many people, Rachel Carson, and the whole 19th century batch of people, including the transcendentalists like Phil Emerson and all these people. Influences from India, you know, the Jataka tales, and more consciousness of American Indian writings and also tribal writings from around the world through Jerome Rothenberg's books. And just many, many sources have, I think the whole consciousness, the whole eco-consciousness in many quarters has zoomed up pretty strongly in the last 30, 40 years especially. And of course, in some segments of the society, it just washes off like nothing. But the powerful, the overpowerful economic interests and so forth, you know, sort of overly dense mass culture stuff. Well, it's both, you know, both are true, and certainly it's healthy and good to compartmentalize and focus, you know, and concentrate like that, but at the same time you do the opposite, and the opposite's good too. Everything's overlapped, everything's sort of dual, everything's coexisting, and I certainly believe a lot in contradictions, so that you can be doing something and half of your motivation is the total opposite of that thing. And, you know, it's all right that writing is self-absorbed. We can be self-absorbed. I'm self-absorbed about my writing. And, you know, I can be disappointed in myself for being too self-absorbed at moments. But then again, I mean, you're part of nature, so, I mean, you're the thing that you know best. And it's all right to be self-absorbed if you're able to cleanse that off and on with you know, with the opposite sense, that you're just a silly little glob of poop, and and you're trying to write about the whole world, and yourself doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We should start.
Okay. Nature is sitting here doing this. Nature is the sled hanging on the wall while sitting here. Nature is the house finch trying to figure out his song. Nature is in the vines that tie his song to the moment. Nature is the river that the traffic sounds are trying to imitate. Nature is the plant in a pot, even though a pot is an unnatural place for nature to be. Nature is the urge to kick the shit out of something. Nature is the sprouting of a dormant truth. Nature is two dead meadow mice. Nature is the sadness of an empty wheat field. Nature is ha 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 dee yodel hoo. Nature is ho 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 ha 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 hum, a warm sound from the tummy. Nature is fun to swim in. Nature is unavoidable breathing.
It's great, I like it a lot. And nature is breathing in the earthy carpet. Nature is not getting the carpet cleaned because it cleans itself. Nature is the dust on a rag and the rag itself. Nature is the grandmother of the rag itself. Nature is the grandmother's need for cleanness. Nature is eating up this garden and vice versa. Nature is in the way the pins cling to the clothesline. Nature is nature, 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 and much more. Nature is a breathing thing that doesn't get lungs. Nature is the impossibility of pure repetition. Nature is the ink stain on wilted flower petals. Nature is totally experimental. Nature is clueless and it panics all the time. Nature is, and you?